Hey everybody, I'm Dave.
And I'm Kyle.
And this is Technology, Engineering, and Science Today, the podcast. Today's episode is episode number 4, and it is titled Print, From the Latin Printicus. And before we get 1,500 emails, it's a joke.
It's a pretty funny joke, actually.
Yeah, it's an ongoing thing. We want to thank Vernard Henley.
One of our dedicated viewers.
He works here at the university, and we talk to him all the time. He's a really funny guy, and when he prints things, he says, print, from the Latin Printicus.
Yes.
And today's episode is on 3D printing, so we thought it was the perfect title. So before we get started, I'd like to remind everybody of our contact information. If you want to get involved in the conversation, or tell us we are dead wrong, or that you hate us, send us an email at test@pearsonmediagroup.com. Call our voicemail at 501-396-9351. Those are the two preferred methods. If you call the voicemail, you will get on the show. We will play the voicemail whenever we do response.
Unless there's just so many of them.
Yeah, we'll pick
the
in
best.
that case, we'll pick the best ones. But we will play the videos, or not the videos, but the voicemails that we are going to respond to on the show. You can also get in touch with us through our Facebook page, send us a message, write a post, or in the comments below this video.
Somewhere down there.
So yeah, it's around there somewhere. So we don't actually have any commentary from last week. 2 weeks ago, actually. We didn't do an episode last week.
We took Pi Day off. We ate too much pie. A little sick to the stomach.
Hey, I'm wearing my Pi Day shirt.
You're a little late to the party.
Yeah. But yes, Pi Day was last week, but we did not do an episode last week. But 2 weeks ago, we did wearable technology and talked about Google Glass and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So anyway, today's episode is 3D printing. So a lot of people, when we talk about 3D printing, a lot of people ask us what it really is, and it's really a process called additive manufacturing.
Right, you're adding material to an object or a surface,
right,
instead of, for example, like milling, which is it's the reverse process essentially of 3D printing. You take an object that you already have and you cut material away, you remove it, and this works in both. I mean, actually, it's really only three-dimensional. Even though you can create planar objects and go down, it may look 2D, but it's all 3D.
Right. So a lot of people, when they see examples of 3D printed objects, they're like little trinkets or toys,
right,
because they were printed as examples of what a 3D printer can do. I know that the most popular one I've seen is a whistle.
Yeah, a whistle
with the ball inside and everything.
Right. They can
for the shrill referee whistle, that kind of thing, and it comes off the machine ready to use.
It's pretty cool.
A lot of times you see wrenches and that kind of thing, but really there are real world applications.
Right there
for this technology.
We haven't reached the peak of what we can. Thank you, David. We haven't reached the peak yet of what we can truly do with 3D printers.
Right.
There's still a lot more to come, and that'll lead me into. We have an interview today.
Yes,
with someone.
We did do an interview with someone who's actually in the industry using 3D printers.
Yes.
And it's really interesting what he's doing with them. But we will actually get to that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk just before we really get started, and we have a couple of examples about the practical uses of 3D printing. Of course, avoiding what you guys talk about in the interview. Don't want to spoil that.
Right.
So a lot of things can be 3D printed. You can use a 3D printer to print components.
Yes,
for things. Anything that's not electronic can basically be 3D printed, as long as the material that you're using to 3D print has the tensile strength you need in whatever component you're using. So,
right.
like vehicle components, well, unless you're using one of the new 3D printers that print using metal,
Correct.
liquefied metal. Unless you're using one of those, you're not going to get the kind of strength you need out of a vehicle component.
No, well, I guess we'll talk about it later. I'm not going to spoil it.
Okay. So really, the biggest question for 3D printing, because it's still in its infancy, this is a brand new thing that we're not using a whole lot right now.
Correct.
But where do we think it's going in the future? I see it as something that could revolutionize manufacturing.
Yes, manufacturing, and I'll touch on it briefly because we'll expand more on it in the interview. Printing different materials other than what we have currently, which are resins or metal powders.
Mm-hmm.
There are different ways of 3D printing, but I see other materials in the future that will figure out a way to use those other materials in manufacturing that will give us the tensile strength that we need to design these systems.
Right. This is, honestly, this is a revolutionary thing akin to the automated production line.
Right. And
or just the production line in general in the automotive industry. Whenever they figured out they could do things a lot faster if everybody just did one thing.
correct.
It is on that level of revolutionary manufacturing processes.
Well, the best thing is that if you're designing something, because the current way to do it. Hold on, guys. My microphone is slipping here. The best way. There we go. Hold on, we'll fix it. It's not being cooperative today. It's not being nice. The best way we have right now is we use 3D modeling programs, and we can only see a virtual rendering of the object. We can't physically hold the object, see where things might go wrong. 3D printing would allow engineers to take their virtual models, make a scale model, and put components together and see how these components interact together. Right. Where do things need to be changed?
And you'll expand on that in your interview.
Yes, Seward talks about it a little.
That interview is pretty broad, really. Mm-hmm. It's really going to cover a lot of stuff, and you did a good job.
Yeah, I think I did too.
But before we get to that, we do have some articles.
Yes. You can go first.
Okay.
Yours is pretty cool.
Okay, I'll start. So what we were just talking about in the topic introduction was uses and how it can be used in manufacturing. Specifically, I mentioned automotive manufacturing.
Correct.
So Edag, which is a company. It's a company. Let's see, where did that explanation of them go? They work.
Hold on.
They work together to not only improve manufacturing processes but design processes, and they have experts in both sides that work together and cooperate in order to get things done. So basically, what they've come up with is a 3D printed car. Now, it looks like, and of course we'll post the articles so everybody can see, but it looks like a bunch of scaffolding, a bunch of pipes,
right,
just put together, and then this futuristic shell going around it.
Looks like a hover car.
I don't know if they plan to put wheels on it or not, but it does not, in the concept drawings, it does not have wheels or anything. And that's the most important thing to remember in talking about this. It is a concept.
Right.
We don't have this.
No.
Printing larger objects like that is still a very difficult
The printers are very expensive that you need to require to print. If everything on this, which it doesn't really show anything detailed, I can't really see whether everything is all. It looks like the chassis is all one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the big thing is they've made it in two different parts, chassis and body, but they print the whole piece.
Correct.
So, like, today...
I don't even see a spot where the engine would mount. Scroll back down where it had just the... Okay.
So they unveiled this a couple of weeks ago at the Geneva Motor Show, the concept drawings and that kind of thing, and they're calling it the Genesis. And it's more a sculpture than an automobile right now. But so today, if cars crash into each other, it happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so today, if one of my body panels gets smashed up, I can take it off and replace it.
Correct.
That's no problem. But with a 3D printed car that it only has two pieces, the body and the chassis, it's going to be kind of hard to replace just the piece. You're going to have to take it off and print a whole new body. That kind of thing. I don't know what their thoughts on that are. But they have some really interesting ideas on what the cars of the future will look like.
Right.
And how they'll be operated. They have a car that they designed.
What is that thing?
That's what I'm about to explain, actually. They had a car that they premiered at the 2004 Geneva International Motor Show called GenX, which had a bed in it, and the roof the roof raised up for more room.
Whoa, now.
And it was aimed at people who lived in their cars.
That looks like a car that's a little more pricey than someone who lives in their car could afford.
But the general idea is they were aiming at people who sleep in their cars, so the roof raises up, and there's a bed in there, and all the comforts of home basically in your car. So I think that it looks like it'd be maybe a rear-mounted engine.
Maybe in there. It could go in there.
Or maybe up here. But the design of the car was after a turtle shell.
Yeah, it looks like that.
Which is called biomimicry. We do it all the time. We design things. When you have a problem that you need to figure out a creative way to solve it, most of the time, we'll look at nature and see if nature's already solved that problem. And if they have, we can mimic that, and that's what they've done here. Because a turtle shell, it's designed to protect, and that's what we want our cars to do. We want them not only to get us places quickly, but also to protect us as efficiently as they can. Right. So if you get into a crash, you want to know that you're going to survive it. And of course, no car is going to get made if it's not safe these days.
No.
So they're looking to improve the design and improve the process, but like we said, it's a really expensive thing. But the whole reason that they give for wanting to do this is we're living kind of in a time, and I'm going to quote the article here, where instead of saying if it ain't broke, don't fix it, now we look at things, if it ain't broke, break it, because there's no chance we'll be doing it the same way in the near future. And of course, I am quoting the article there, but really that does ring true.
Right.
Everything in technology is moving so quickly that we don't sit still and keep doing it the same way for very long.
No, there's always a new way to fix something, improve on it, reduce cost.
Yep, we want things smaller, cheaper, faster.
Yes.
As evidenced by, I'll use the automobile industry again, is they roll a vehicle off the line. Their statistics, they make so many vehicles that they can roll one off the line every 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's insane.
Of course, there are a lot of people involved, and it is the automated production line. There are robots doing quick welding and that kind of thing that humans couldn't possibly
not with
keep
the
up
precision.
With. No, but it just shows that we are a culture that wants things quickly.
Yes.
We don't like to spend a lot of time.
We want it here and now, not tomorrow.
And we want it small and cheap.
Yes.
Which that kind of brings up the fact that the trend in cell phones right now. I know this is a little bit off topic, but the trend in cell phones is not smaller; it's bigger.
It's bigger.
People want bigger screens.
Well, they want bigger screens because they want a phone that acts like a tablet but without the tablet size. So it's a mobile computer, but it's not a tablet, but it's not a phone.
Right.
It's a phablet, as the industry calls it.
Really?
A phablet. Yes.
I have not heard
Yes,
that.
they're called phablets. So like the Galaxy, was it the Galaxy Notes?
Oh yeah, the
huge ones. Yeah, they're called phablets.
Okay.
Because they're more the in between a phone and a tablet.
I had not heard that before. But so anyway, that's really interesting, but it's only a concept. It's not something that we're actually doing right now. This is something that we're looking more toward the future.
No, the more practical way of this is if people can print their own body kits when 3D printers become accessible to the general public.
Sure.
More than a big company research object. When I can have one at home, I can put it out in my garage. Or I mean, they have desktop 3D printers, but those only do small objects. But I mean, when I have a printer that can print a quarter panel or a bumper.
Well, you know, if you have one that's big enough to print a car. I mean, really, we're talking about manufacturers building cars by printing and that kind of thing. But if you have one big enough to print a car, you could design your own car if you were so inclined. I mean, that's amazing. But the more practical and more right now application for this is in medical technology, isn't it? And I believe you have something there.
So it's an article about how surgeons used a 3D model of a boy's heart, or it just says a 14-month-old child. Oh no, I assumed it was a boy. to help them better understand their situation with the heart before they went into surgery. So they took, it doesn't say what they did, but I guess they took a CAT scan, a MRI. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, images taken from a CT scan.
Mm-hmm. So they were allowed to. They took a model of his heart, put it into a 3D rendering software, hooked that up to a 3D printer, and bam, they have a 3D version of his heart.
And it was much larger, so that they could see, so that they could accurately see what was wrong with it before they actually went in to try to fix it.
So they can see. Okay, well, they can see, well, this part here is where we need to fix. Well, where is this relative to the other important things in the body? So they can get a better idea of how to maneuver around in and efficiently fix what they're trying to fix. So,
sure.
I guess they could do a little mock surgery maybe on the heart. I don't know how well that would go, but...
Well, I don't think it really needs to be a mock surgery, but to be able... For a surgeon to be able to study the object that he's going to be working on without endangering the individual is revolutionary. It's mind-blowing that they were able to do that using this technology. And it really, I don't know what the statistics on this would be, but it seems to me like it would save quite a few lives.
Right. So whether it's a heart or it's the brain or, I mean, mostly everything else gets removed or replaced. Can't think of anything else. I guess now the spleen gets removed. Mostly the major organs like the brain and the heart, which you would want careful precision surgery on.
Right.
Where you can see what's wrong in your hand before opening up the patient and know where to go, what's wrong, it improves that person's chance of survival by a lot. From complications during the surgery, or other things, just something. Well, I mean, there's always the something might change when you open the patient up, but there's always that you go in knowing more than what you can see from a scan.
Definitely. And there's also no guesswork involved there. You know exactly the pathway you want to take. You know exactly how you want to fix the problem because you've already seen the problem. You don't have to go in with a camera and work on the fly.
Right.
Which is always better.
Right. And I know another thing which I'll expand on it only because we talked briefly about in the interview. We don't expand on it much. It's just more mentioned.
Right.
We talk about prosthetics.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of articles on how people have started 3D printing prosthetic limbs.
Right.
So
and let's be honest, if you need a leg,
right.
If you need a prosthetic leg or something like that,
I can make one at home now.
Well, it's not just about making it at home. Right now, at least in the United States, more than elsewhere, more than some other places, it's really expensive
to get a prosthetic.
To get I know I had to wear a knee brace growing up, all through from the time I was about 13 on till I was about 16. I had to wear a knee brace because of a four-wheeler wreck. I had an ACL injury. And I didn't have an ACL for a long time, and to hold my knee together, I needed a knee brace. Luckily, we had good insurance, and if everything was covered on that, we never really had to pay anything. But you still get to see the price of these objects,
right? And
they are incredibly expensive. And part of that is due to the precision manufacturing that's needed. But with additive manufacturing, 3D printing, you can get really precise. And you don't have, and the cost, of course, is going to be a lot lower using this technology. And so, if any way that we can make medical costs drop, it's better because non-essential things. And I know that people who need a prosthetic leg or something of that sort probably don't see them as non-essential.
Correct.
But insurance companies and other medical businesses like that, they're not going to see that as necessarily something you have to have.
Right.
But if the price is lower, then that's not something you really have to worry about.
No.
And really, anything medical in the U.S. is way too expensive.
Right, it's crazy.
Right.
There is another thing, which I mean, it's not really medical. Well, I guess it kind of is, but they use I guess it relates to. Well, I'll hit on the subject and then I'll talk about it more. They have like the shoe, the insole things, like at Walmart or wherever,
right?
Where you go stand on it, it says, "Oh, you need this insole."
Right.
Well, they have something like that also, where it'll 3D print insoles for you, shoe inserts. But that also gets me into the other thing, which is the other side of 3D printing, which we'll touch more on because we could do a whole show on just this alone. Is that on a 2D printer, you don't just have the printer, you have the scanner.
Mm-hmm.
Too. So 3D scanning software and 3D scanners, physical hardware, is another thing that's on the rise with it, where you can take an easier way of modeling an object. So they have.
So instead of drawing something out, if you want to replicate it, you just put it in your 3D scanner, it scans it, and then it can print it.
And then it can print it, loads it into a graphical rendering software. You can see it. You can create like paths for the 3D printer in the software that interfaces with the 3D printer. That's another thing that's come into the market with the creation of these 3D printers is 3D scanners,
right?
That are used alongside them.
Okay. So a quick reminder of contact info. If you want to get involved in this conversation, tell us we are wrong, or just comment on what we're talking about, you can send us an email at test@pearsonmediagroup.com. Call us and leave us a voicemail at 501-396-9351. You can send us a message or post on our Facebook page, or you can comment in the comment section below this video. So let's talk a little bit about the interview before we do it. Now, while we were there, we did get a video of one of his 3D printers in action, the fourth iteration of the printer he calls Simpson, which I have some video editing to do on that. But
it'll be up later, and
yeah, I'll get that edited, and I will get it on the YouTube channel, post a link on Facebook, all that stuff. Now, we didn't actually print anything. We did a dry run, but it's still pretty cool to see this thing in action. And Mr. Seward will talk about it in the interview, but it's not your typical everyday 3D printer. Now, something he really didn't touch on so much was how he makes his 3D printers.
In that he self-replicates.
Yeah,
the 3D printers.
He 3D prints the components for his 3D printer.
And you'll see that it's everything that's not yellow.
Or everything that is yellow is 3D printed on that 3D printer. If you go watch that video when we put it up, every single yellow part is 3D printed. So all the arms and the joints and linkages and that kind of thing. Basically anything that isn't electronic.
Yes.
Or the tubing, wiring, that kind of thing.
The heating plate, all that.
And of course the computer components underneath.
Right.
So earlier today, Kyle, we went down to your alma mater.
Yes.
ASMSA, the Arkansas School for Mathematics, Sciences, and the Arts. And we talked to one of the teachers there, Mr. Nicholas Seward, who is, how would you put it?
He's a computer science teacher.
Well, but in 3D printing, he started a business.
Yes, he started a company.
Basically sell 3D printers?
Right. Well, to meet the needs that he, to meet the needs for what he's doing, plans to do with 3D printers.
Now, before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about what ASMSA is?
All right, so I wouldn't say boarding school, it's a public school, in which the students, we go and we live there during the week and go home on the weekends.
And it's just for your junior and senior years in high school. Yes, junior and
senior year in high school. Basically, it's accelerated programs for kids that don't get enough out of their home school. So
those kids that are
stuck in the crappy public education system.
Public high school. The kids that are in public high school and that kind of thing that that are just finding it too easy, so they're bored and that kind of thing. They can go to the school and get an accelerated program that's more difficult, more challenging for them.
They have a lot of fun programs.
And of course, for every class you take, you get college credit.
Well, I wouldn't say every class, but they have a lot of concurrent classes. You have your AP courses in which you take the AP exam. You can go look that up if you need to know what it is. Most people know what the Advanced Placement Program is, AP, that's what it stands for. So you'll take a test. If you pass it, depending on the college requirements or university that you're going to, if you got a certain score, you get college credit for the class, don't have to take it. And obviously, if you get concurrent credit, you essentially took that college class. So,
talking about concurrent credit, I'll give you permission to brag on yourself just a little bit here. How many credits, college credits, did you come into UALR with?
I had 27.
27 credits.
I was essentially a sophomore. I was 3 hours short of a sophomore.
Right, and so basically that means how much earlier do you get to finish your degree than say I do, coming in with 0 credits?
I could finish a year earlier.
A year?
If I wanted to.
And so that you can save a lot of time, get in the industry more quickly, and really start making those big bucks.
Yes.
Okay. So if we're ready, I want to talk about the process, just briefly, of putting this interview into our live stream. Because of the way that we live stream this recording on YouTube, we can't inject a video or anything like that in.
Right. Otherwise, we would have gone down there. We would have taken
We would have
video
video
recording.
camera. We would have video recorded it. But because we can't do that, it's audio only. Now, of course, we are using a mixing board to make these episodes. I know a lot of people have asked what this headphone, this earbud, is for. It's the monitor from the mixing board, so I can hear our audio and make sure it's not too loud, or make sure it's not being, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's just right.
Making sure it's not getting all crackly. It's not getting distorted from
so
the
you guys
microphone
can have a
preamp
better
and that
listening
kind of
experience.
thing. But because we can't inject video into the live stream, what we're going to have to do is turn off the camera. And
So
we're going to turn.
Look at us all dumb-faced while we're
Right.
listening.
And I'm going to turn off our mic. We're going to turn off our microphones, and you're just going to hear the interview that Kyle did with Mr. Nick Stewart. And because our logo is square and Google is very round, they put everything into circles.
Yes.
So when we turn off the camera, you're going to see our logo, but it's going to be all cut off because Google puts everything in the logo.
And there's no way to fix it too.
Right. We're very limited in what we can do as far as this goes. So without further ado, let's play that interview.
All right. Okay. Is it going? Okay. All right, so we're here today with Mr. Nick Stewart. He is a teacher at the Arkansas School for Math Science, and he is an entrepreneur in the 3D printing field. So, Mr. Stewart, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I teach computer science at the Arkansas School for Mathematics, Science, and the Arts, or ASMSA, and just as a hobby, mostly, I'm trying to transition into being an entrepreneur, but mostly a hobby right now. I'm making different 3D printers. The 3D printers I've been working on lately are kind of unusual because they don't use any linear rails. Most printers just have Cartesian movements in the X, Y, Z direction. Mine kind of break that, and I'm not unique in that, but I am unique in not using rails whenever I break the Cartesian coordinate system. Anyways, too technical. Anyways, I'm looking at possibly producing printers among other things related to this hobby, but it's too early to say yet.
Right. Okay. So what role do you see 3D printers playing in future engineering and technology fields?
Well, first off, they have a huge role today that people might not realize. Being able to iterate through prototypes and as a design tool, they're already making huge changes on the industry, or inducing huge changes in the design industry. You could come up with an idea for a product, 3D print it, test it the next day, throw it away, make some more changes once you discovered what's going on with the real prototype. And the technology ranges from making actual useful prototypes to making just mock-ups where you can just see what the parts look like. And that's being used right now. Eventually, I think it'll transition into manufacturing. Right now, 3D printing is a pretty slow process in that it takes maybe a day to make a really complex part, which is not too bad. If you were to make it by hand, it could take weeks. Or try to get all the tooling to do the injection molding for it, it could take a very long time. So, but you wouldn't want to make millions of parts where each one takes a day to make. And so we're trying to move to making it where they can make things faster or make more in parallel. And anyways, that's a long move, and we're not really sure how that's going to play out. But beyond manufacturing, we can, and right now we can move it to building houses out of, having houses being 3D printed, because you don't manufacture the same house a million times, so the same rules of scale don't apply. It would make sense to set up a 3D printer and have it print over a week or something, and then have your house, and then each one can be unique, and you just have to pay for electricity and the hardware and the rental cost of your 3D house printer. And then
so are you saying that we'll eventually have houses built out of not wood?
I think it doesn't make any sense to have humans still build them when we do have this technology. It's economically, all houses in the future are probably going to be 3D printed, with a few exceptions. Occasionally somebody will like to say, "Hey, I built this house by hand in the woods. I have this cabin. It's like I only built it with hand tools." But once we have the technology established, and there's lots of companies that have house 3D printers, and you can rent them for cheaper than you could hire people to come build the house for you, then all houses will probably be 3D printed. You still have things that people have to do. You still have to wire and insulate, or whatever, and then the maintenance of the house. But all of that will go into the design of the actual houses. Who knows how it's actually going to play out? But then on the other scale, on the small scale or the bio scale, people are already printing one-offs for bone replacements, or not bone replacements, but prosthetics, and you can actually 3D print these scaffoldings for bone. So you can miss a whole chunk of your femur or something, and they could 3D print a special bone scaffold that will connect the two ends and hold it together and let the bone grow through the scaffolding and hold it together in a structurally sound way while you're going around. Let's see, what else? There's tons of articles about people getting cranial replacements and this and that. 3D printing teeth is huge. They do this all the time now, and let's see. Anyways, it's used all over the place right now. It's just the average person doesn't really recognize all the uses because on a day-to-day basis, you go to Walmart, you pick up an item, you come home, you cook it, whatever, you drive your car, you're not creating, like when people think of 3D printer, they're thinking of some person sitting down with this device and they design something up, and they print it out and they have this thing right there. Or everybody has this appliance in their house where they can say, hey, I want this part, I want to, instead of going to the store, you say, hey, I just want to download that and print this. We're not to that point yet. Hopefully we can get to that point, but right now there's a lot of expertise involved in running a 3D printer and printing high quality parts, and there's a lot of limitations to the way you can use the 3D printed parts when compared to like injection molded parts and this and that. So, and it's not reasonable to educate an end user in all that knowledge. So we're still quite a ways off from having it in the household. We're waiting for that killer app. Whenever computers took off. At first, people were like, why would you need one of these things? They're not useful, blah, blah, blah. And then they came up with spreadsheets, and so people could actually keep track of money and do it in a very consistent and useful way. And then, once industry started using those, then, people started finding uses for them in their homes. And then now we use computers for everything. But, at first people were golfing at the existence of computers, and they're just impractical. Why would you pay $3,000-$4,000 for this machine that's not going to do much for you? Anyways, so same for 3D printing. You can pay a lot for a 3D printer and get in your house, and it won't do much for most people. We have to find that killer app.
Right. Okay, so back to manufacturing. There's a company called Markforged that they've made a 3D printer that they say and they've shown is capable of printing carbon fiber.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, and there's also 3D printers that can build up, it takes powdered metals and builds up.
I'm not sure about the Mark Forge one. I think this is the one I'm thinking about. It prints a plastic shell like most of these FFF printers, fuse filament fabrication machines. Anyways, they just squirt out plastic like a hot glue gun and build layer by layer. And then I think this particular machine, they come by and actually wrap carbon filament around your part after it's been run through a reservoir of epoxy or whatever's holding the carbon fiber together. Anyways, and it wraps it tightly around the outside of the part, and after it dries, you have this plastic part with this carbon fiber shell, and you can make any kind of weird organic shape you want. Not anything. There's some restrictions on what you have to make, so you can make a really quick, wing for a model airplane or something like that. But again, this completely goes in the category of you have to have a lot of expertise and you have to design it specifically for this printer, so you can take advantage of that particular technique. I would put that particular printer in kind of an oddity category. It's not going to be like a general purpose machine. I think some industry that wants to make a certain kind of part that they want carbon fiber and they want all these to be unique, then yeah, that's going to be the perfect printer for them. But not everything needs to have like these are just basic tubular shapes that can change the cross section, as they go up, and so you have to be really creative in the way you design it and how you would use those parts. So it's
all right. Well, do you see possibly other materials than just the resins that we have now being used? Because I know there's the power. They have like titanium. They take and they
well, the most flexible 3D printing technology out there. Well, there's really two. There's selective laser sintering, and then there's electron beam melting. And both of those will essentially work on the principle that you have this layer of powder material of whatever material you want that can be melted and reformed, and then you draw on it with a laser, or if you have a vacuum, you can use electron beam to melt the granules together, and then you do this over and over again, layer after layer, and then you can build up any complex part that you want. But even this technology, which it doesn't have the restrictions that the cheap printing does, the fuse filament fabrication. That has limitations. You can only go out at a certain angle before you need support structures. You can't just print in the open air. With this powdery bed, you can print parts with really fine details, and then the powder itself can support the part. But then you can't do things like have intricate internal structures without really thinking through how are you going to get all the powder out. So you can't just make this hollow part, and you have to have a hole for all the stuff to get out. So you'd have to print, have this little hole, dump all the powder out, and then seal it back.
Fill it up somehow.
So you still have restrictions whenever you're making parts, but luckily these restrictions are much less imposing than building things with a CNC mill, for instance. Doing subtractive modeling instead of additive. Right. But anyways, point is, you can make parts out of a whole slew of materials, and the FFF modeling, the SLS, and the EBM modeling. All of these different things have different strengths, can make it out of different materials, and so. I don't know if that answers your question directly, but we can make things out of whatever materials we want.
Right. Because I know, do you see like the fused filament fabrication? Do you see that possibly being used with? I know this is a little far-fetched idea, but liquid metals building up structures in the future somehow.
People are already doing that, but it's it's very costly, and they're not very structurally sound.
Okay.
People have done some stuff just making little electric traces. And anyways, I don't think that's the answer. Whenever you can just go grab an SLS machine or an EBM machine, and you can make titanium or tungsten parts, and you can throw them in an engine and use them directly almost.
Okay.
So I mean, the technology's there. The question right now, the problem with those machines is they're just more expensive, and you have to have controlled environments. So and the cost can come down for those. It's not really crazy machines. So we have to have a powder reservoir. We have to be able to control something in the XYZ direction, and we have to have a strong laser, and we might have to be able to, you know, duct the exhaust to the outside so we don't, you know, make people sick. But, you know, the machines are inherently pretty simple, and there's like a lot of little technical gotchas, but, you know, there's no reason the machines need to cost $250,000. None of that has that big of a gotcha.
All right, so let's talk about what you're doing with 3D printers, and you've started a company called Concept Forge. And
yes, so I just a hobby. I made this printer called Simpson, which doesn't have any linear rails, and then I got sidetracked and made another one called Wally, which also doesn't have linear rails. I originally was just doing it as a hobby. Then I got the bug, and I was thinking maybe I could sell these. As it turns out, they're both very hard to calibrate. So that's the technical hang-up right now. Unlike Cartesian bots, they're already in the XYZ direction, and anyways, you just have to calibrate one axis at a time. Here, you know, the motion's all in parallel. You know, one motor affects the position all three directions at the same time. Anyways, they have a lot of potential, but we have to work the problems out. Anyway, so I was thinking I might kickstart one of those printers, but through the process of sending out some beta units, and so that I've actually sent out printers to people and let them test them. But
you're getting good responses.
I'm getting good. People like them, but they are hard to calibrate, and you have to support the printers that you sell. And unless I have a printer that you can go through this list of steps, and if you follow them exactly, without a shadow of doubt, you're going to get a high performing printer. Unless I can get to that point, I don't want to do that. I can get them printing, but I'm always diagnosing a problem and fixing it, and they're still very experimental. So I view them as kind of opening up the conversation into what a 3D printer is and how they need to look. And anyways, as a side project, I really want to focus on improving as my company. I want to open the conversation up, and I want to look at things that people usually immediately look at. It's like, that's too hard, or that's impractical. So I want to kind of introduce crazy ideas and show how they do work. And I won't necessarily take it to production level and ship 20 million of the same printer. I want to more look at designing, different things, and then people can take those designs and morph them and make them their own, or take what they want from them. Ideally, what I want to have is this place where more of a collaborative design experience on the internet, where you can design machines together, and whenever you have a machine that you want to purchase, you can hit print, and I could have a service that will take care of getting everything printed or laser cut, and get all the vitamins, the bolts, and the nuts and the bearings, and have that all packaged up and sent to somebody. Right now, the open source hardware world, it's kind of, every man for themselves, and they might share something on the internet, and somebody else might take it and then build it. But if you're kind of coming in, from outside, and you're not aware of this whole world, and you want to get started in a project, there's a high bar to entry. You have to read up on a whole lot of things. You have to have a high level of technical expertise already, and you have to have. Well, I use Inventor to model a lot of stuff, and not everybody has that tool. So we have all these different peoples with different skill sets with different tools, and it doesn't all mesh together. So I want to work towards getting, at least a web presence where it provides a modeling tool and a part library and stuff that hobbyists can use together to make machines, within this idea that, you can, everybody, well, let's back up. So, I mean, they can all work together in this framework.
Okay.
And share designs and branch designs and modify the designs. It'll keep track of all the changes. You can roll back to previous design, previous versions of your designs. You can pull in standard hardware. Everything's built in and designed to help people get to the point of being productive in the open source hardware world as quick as possible.
So you're looking for people to, you talked about designing something, so that could be anything, not just are you talking about like designing 3D printers?
It could be 3D printers, or CNC mills, or a lathe, or a candy dispenser, or a Raspberry Pi, case, or whatever people feel the need to design and share. I feel like if there's, right now there's some websites called like Thingiverse, and you can go there and download designs, and if you have a 3D printer, you can print them. Or if you go to another website called Make XYZ, you can take a 3D model and give it to them, and they will make that part and send it to you. And you can go to McMaster-Carr and order all your bolts and bearings and stuff like this. I was probably thinking about using all those sources, but just try to glue them all together so somebody can design something complete with all the bolts and nuts and everything. And then somebody else can be like, oh, I like that solution. And they can say, hey, give that to me. And so all of that stuff will get coordinated. It'll get printed, laser cut, bearings and bolts will get ordered.
Right.
So, and then if they like the design but they want to modify it, the tool could be right there, so they could put their name on it, or they could change this bolt for that bolt. Or, anyways, if all those things were right at somebody's fingertip and it was a centralized place, then I feel like the open source hardware community could get quite a boost, at least in quality of content, where somebody can just take something and quickly modify it, and other people can benefit from those changes if they want to. I don't know if you know how GitHubs work, or how Git works, or source management. You can have designs, and back up. So right now, I have this repository where I keep all my designs, and occasionally somebody will be like, well, what if you do this, or what if you do that? So I'll actually branch off the design, and I will do changes on it. All the while I'm keeping the root branch the same, or making other modifications on that. And then if I get to the point where I like this experimental branch and it's ready for primetime use, I can merge this back into my design. Well, somebody else can do the same thing to my design. They can branch it off and make modifications. If I like what they're doing, and especially since everything I do is licensed under the GNU public license, any change they do, it has to be also open source. And so anything they do, I can immediately wrap it back into my project. So I can have all these individuals working on projects, branching things out, but it actually adds to the whole as people, steal things back and forth from each other.
So that everyone's working together for.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like a anarchist way to have people working together for a common goal in some form. But I mean, everybody's working on their own particular goal usually.
Right.
I hope we get to the point where we actually have a concerted effort of a bunch of people working on one goal. But I'll take everybody working for themselves, and just using the advances that each person adds to the project, to add to the whole. So.
Okay, so you touched briefly on what you future want to do with your 3D printers, and I know we have here at ASMSA, they have what's called FIRM, which is basically it's a year-long research project, basically, that the students do. So were you looking for something to do, make like a print farm, which is kind of what you touched on?
Yeah, I've been dragging my feet on that. I meant to have a print farm, 6 months ago here, and we're actually making some headway to actually having a hackerspace. Not hackerspace, but we'll call it makerspace. That's a friendlier way of calling it. But the old book room down on the first floor of the admin building, they're like, that's cold storage in prime real estate. So they're kicking the books out, and we're gonna buy a laser and some 3D printers and soldering station, and buy lots of electrical components.
So where people can do it-yourself items, projects.
Right, and we can. We can do some shameless self-promotion by having the science engineering institutes and having kids from all over the state that are aged where they can come to our school. We can get them here to do some educational activity. We can have them use the 3D printers or laser cutters during the weekend. Have them get the bug, and so then they come here and continue to use them for projects.
I wish I had this. All right. So keep going. I'm sorry. With what you were saying, keep going.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I mean, that's pretty much it. I think we're on schedule for getting that to happen next year. So we'll see.
So you hope it's something where everyone can get involved in the future, and that you want.
I would like to have established hours where people can go and use them, and have supervisions, people that know how to use the machines that can help people use it. That might be a little lofty of a goal, but right now we have a shop and the CNC mill, but it takes somebody being down there helping somebody use it. Somebody can't just walk in that's never used it before and be able to take advantage of it. There's a
learning process.
And that can hurt people. Luckily, the 3D printers can't hurt people as easily, so you could almost maybe just have really good YouTube videos telling people how to use them for the first time,
how to use them like that. So, all right. Well, I've enjoyed talking with you. Thank you for sharing your expertise in the field. I would call it more expertise than most people have, and sharing what you're doing with them and how you're helping advance STEM field research, even if it's just a small part in the open source community.
No problem. I enjoyed it.
But I think it's been good.
All right. Well done.
Yes.
I really enjoyed it. I hope everyone else did too. Man, Mr. Seward, great guy.
Yeah.
Great guy. We really appreciate his time in helping to make this episode really great.
And what he's
doing. What he's doing is just fascinating, and it's really important.
Yes.
So, if you want to get in touch with us, join in on the conversation, tell us we're wrong about something, or that we're just horrible people, send us an email at test@pearsonmediagroup.com. Call our voicemail, leave us a message at 501-396-9351. Again, we will put those on the show. Please keep your language relatively clean, that kind of thing, and do keep it brief. You can also send us a message or post on our Facebook page, or leave us a comment in the comment section below this video. So we're not doing an episode next week.
Going on spring break.
Yeah, we are on spring break. We're both going to be out of town.
Yes.
At the end of the week. We have a road trip planned for the beginning of the week, but at the end of the week we're going to be out of town, or if we're back, we're going to be recovering from our time out of town. So we will not be doing an episode next week.
Oh, we'll be back the week after.
The week after, however, we will be doing an episode. We got a great episode coming up for you, which brings me to my next question for you, Kyle. What in science fiction? What's your favorite robot?
You know, you asked me this earlier, and I don't have an answer.
You gotta come on.
I can't think of any famous robots.
Okay.
From science fiction.
Well, as you know.
No. I know.
Okay.
What's his name from Aliens? God.
You've lost me. I'm afraid I've not seen it.
You've never seen Aliens?
Not seen
okay.
It.
Well, the android in that one.
Okay.
There's an android.
Okay, so technically, android does fall under robot, but they're not exactly a robot. But mine is also a famous android. Of course, you know I really love Star Trek: The Next Generation, and I think Brent Stiner's character Data was just the greatest robot that science fiction ever produced. Because when he first started out, you know, he was more of an infant.
Right.
He was learning to try to simulate human behavior. And he had been doing it for a long time. Whenever we first saw him in Star Trek on the Enterprise, but he was still learning, and we got to experience him learning what it means to be human and simulate human behavior. And he was a tool for showing us all that's good in ourselves and bad as well. Many times, of course, more often the bad through his brother Lore.
Right.
But really, I mean, Gene Roddenberry had just a fantastic view of what the future should be like, and you know, Data was a really interesting, really entertaining character. So I'd have to say that he is my favorite. We're not talking about science fiction.
No.
Or robots in science fiction specifically next week, or not next week, but the week after. But we are going to talk about robotics.
Yes, and I know that you'll have a guest on.
Yes, I'm going to speak with Mr. Vernard Henley. Now, every year here at Euler, we do this competition for middle schoolers and high schoolers. Called Best Robotics, where they get a kit and they build a robot.
And I'll brag, ASMSA always won. Don't fake laugh.
Sadly, my school did make it to regionals once, but we never
and
really
then got crushed.
Did a lot. But anyway, every year we have this competition where these teams, these high schoolers, these middle schoolers, they get a kit and they build the best robot they can to accomplish a specific goal, and they always relate it to some real world
something in the STEM field
thing. Yes, some real world scenario. We had elevator to the moon one year. We did bug extermination one year. We did a nuclear wasteland cleanup one year.
What's Patrick? Computer manufacturing. Motherboard.
We manufactured a CPU.
CPU.
This past year. Now, of course, I am heavily involved in BEST, but
both of us are.
Once I got out of high school, I got involved on the other end of making that competition happen for the young people that are still in the competition side of it. I know I really appreciated it in high school. I really enjoyed it, had a ton of fun, and really I got to practice my programming skills. I got to practice building things and coming up with ideas and that kind of thing, and collaborating with other people, and it was a fantastic thing to do. So I do continue to help with that. But Mr. Vernard Henley, who is now the assistant dean in the College of Engineering and Information Technology here at UALR, organizes and runs the competition each year.
I'm pretty sure he'll have plenty to say about it. Brag a little.
Yeah.
About it.
So I'm gonna go sit down with him, and I'm gonna ask him some questions about BEST and what it means for STEM fields, and what it means for the kids that that take part, what it means for us volunteers that take part, because it does mean a lot for us too.
And we can talk, I guess, not spend too much time remembering the past.
Right. We can reminisce just a little bit, I guess. But even today, it still means a lot to us to be able to be on the other side of it now. But I'm going to talk to him about that kind of stuff and try to keep it brief, of course. But we do have some really interesting stuff coming up in that episode, so we hope you will join us.
April 4th.
Right.
Is the date.
Friday, April 4th. We're going to try to be back to the normal time around 2 or 3 o'clock
2 or 3, yeah.
in the afternoon, hopefully. And as always, we really appreciate feedback. When we started doing this show, of course, we said that the whole purpose behind it was open forum. We wanted to get people involved. We wanted to hear what people had to say. We wanted to learn some things from our viewers, as well as our viewers maybe learning a few things as well. So feedback is really, really important to us, and we do appreciate it. Test@pearsonmediagroup.com. Send us an email. Hit us up on Facebook. Comment in the comment section below. Call us our voicemail number and leave us a message at 501-396-9351. And of course, we will, if you leave us some feedback, if you leave us some feedback, we'll cover that in the next episode. So thanks for watching, everybody.
This program was produced by Pearson Media Group. PMG is a diverse group of individuals dedicated to perfecting their respective crafts through collaborative projects.